Discover the miraculous transforming journey of faith in 1 Samuel, God's incredible plan revealed. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, when the people of Israel were restless, the elders came to Samuel at Shiloh, demanding a king to rule over them. Their voices echoed through the valley, a cacophony of despair and longing as they stood before the prophet's gate. They felt abandoned, forgetting the mighty deeds of the God who had led them out of Egypt, through the wilderness, and into the promised land. The soil of Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant resided, seemed to tremble with their discontent, and Samuel, the faithful seer, felt the weight of their cries deep in his spirit. Distraught by their request and troubled by their choice, Samuel turned to God in prayer. And God spoke to him gently, revealing, "They have not rejected you, but they have rejected me." With divine resolve, the Lord instructed Samuel to grant their desire but to warn them of the burdens of kingship. With a heavy heart, Samuel called the people forth and spoke of tyranny, taxes, and the danger of following a human ruler who might lead them astray. Yet their hearts were set, and their voices united. They demanded a king. As Samuel scanned the faces before him, he perceived not only desperation but a yearning that moved beyond trust in God. And so, God led him to Saul, a tall and handsome man, strong in stature and charismatic in presence. In secret, Samuel anointed Saul, thus marking the beginning of a reign that glimmered with promise yet bore the shadows of conflict that would soon unravel. 1 Samuel 9 verses 15 to 17. Saul took the helm with vigor, leading Israel to victories against their enemies, yet beneath his facade lay the burgeoning roots of disobedience. When impatience consumed him, he acted without waiting for Samuel to come, offering sacrifices that were not his to make. God's mantle of kingship was pulled from Saul, leading to a dark turn in the narrative and the rejection of God's chosen leader. 1 Samuel 15 verse 26. Meanwhile, in the quiet hills of Bethlehem, a humble shepherd boy named David tended to his father's sheep, drawing strength from the peace around him. Little did he know that the songs he sang upon those hills would soon carry his spirit into the annals of history, embodying divine favor. 1 Samuel 16 verses 7 to 12. As the Spirit of the Lord filled him, David remained oblivious to the trials that loomed above, a king envious of his potential, perilous escapades, and a destiny entwined with the very promise of God. The shadows of Saul's growing madness loomed over David, who became a fugitive on the run. 1 Samuel 19 verses 1 to 2. Yet despite the peril encroaching upon him, David forged ahead in faith. His defining moment came when he faced Goliath, the formidable champion of the Philistines, armed only with a sling and 5 smooth stones. 1 Samuel 17 verses 45 to 50. "The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands," he proclaimed, sending fear rippling through the enemy ranks. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Through the trials and triumphs, David's heart glowed with a faithful commitment to the Almighty, as God's intricate plan started to unravel amidst shadows and victories. Would he be able to embrace the divine purpose laid out before him, straddling the complexities of being both a king in the making and a hunted man? What awaited him within the next chapters of this profound saga, and how would his unwavering faith forever alter the course of a nation? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows across the rugged landscape, David found refuge in the cave of Adullam. There, amid the damp earth and the echoes of his own thoughts, his spirit wrestled with the weight of royal destiny and the stark reality of his flight. With every hushed breath of the surrounding wilderness, he sought the guidance of God, yearning for a glimpse of the divine plan that unfolded before him like a tapestry of mysterious threads. In those still moments, nature bore witness to David's lament, as the chirping of crickets mingled with his prayers. He recalled the words of Samuel, the prophet who, in the name of God, had anointed him as king. Yet now, he was pursued by Saul, the very man whose throne he was destined to inherit. Fear and uncertainty danced within him, but at the core of his strife, a flicker of faith remained unextinguished. It was in this cave, dark yet filled with potential, that David was not alone. The broken and weary came to him, men discontented, in debt, or distressed, drawn by the promise of his leadership. As they gathered around him, their eyes reflected both suffering and hope. David, filled with the Spirit of the Lord, became their rallying point, and he began to instill within them a vision of what could be, a nation united under God's command, restored from the chaos of worldly kingship. Yet Saul's hand was relentless. Word of David's growing band of followers reached him, and he was seized with jealousy and rage. Through the valleys and hills of Judah, Saul hunted relentlessly, seeking to extinguish the light that David represented. He would not rest until David was captured, for in his heart, he sensed the threat of a rival chosen by God himself, 1 Samuel 24 verse 2. One fateful day, as Saul entered the very cave where David and his band of misfits took shelter, silence surrounded them. Unknown to the king, David stood concealed in the shadows. This was a moment fraught with divine tension. The men around David urged him to slay Saul, believing it was the appointed time for his rise. But David, moved by reverence for God's anointed, restrained himself. He chose instead to cut a piece from Saul's robe, a sign of mercy yet a reminder of the king's fading power, 1 Samuel 24 verses 4-7. When Saul departed, David's heart was torn. He had acted with restraint, yet his soul was deeply troubled. I should not have harmed the one whom God has chosen, he lamented among his followers. Each member of his band saw how the mercy he demonstrated was a reflection of his heart for God, who had chosen him for a purpose greater than himself. In this very moment of grace, the Spirit of the Lord spoke to David, affirming that although he might endure periods of suffering, God would not forget his covenant. As surely as the Lord lives, he swore to his men, we will not lift our hand against the Lord's anointed, 1 Samuel 24 verse 6, and thus, in an act of defiance against both fear and vengeance, he solidified the path of righteousness. The challenge before David was staggering, yet the promise of God lingered in the air, a king would rise not through bloodshed but by unwavering faith and divine purpose. How would he navigate the treacherous waters ahead? And would God ultimately fulfill the promises spoken to him through Samuel? In the annals of history, a saga unfolded, one woven by the divine hands of providence. But little did David know that the threads of his trials would become the foundation of a legacy, intertwining with the very heart of Israel's future, a king of the heart sending ripples through time, pointing towards a greater king yet to come. And so the quest continued, with both David and the nation of Israel on the brink of transformation, waiting for the next revelation of God's sovereign design. As the days turned into weeks, David and his men remained in the cave of Adullam, their spirits bound by a common purpose and driven by the hope of a brighter future. Yet, as Saul continued his relentless pursuit, the shadows of fear occasionally crept into their hearts. David's leadership was tested daily, but he became a source of strength to his followers, reminding them that the Lord had not forgotten his promise. Gather round, he would often say, his voice steady amidst the rustle of the cave's echoes. The Lord our God has chosen me for a purpose. He has seen our pain, our oppression. We must hold fast, for our deliverance is at hand. In the stillness of that dark refuge, songs of praise began to rise, each note igniting a fervor that would not be snuffed out. David wrote melodies that spoke of God's faithfulness, and soon, what started as whispers turned into shouts of worship. But in the midst of their gatherings, he often sighed inwardly, pondering how long he might endure the shadows cast by Saul's wrath. One night, while they sang, a visitor approached the cave. It was Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech. Breathless and wretched, he brought news of horror. Saul had slain the priests of Nob, for aiding David, and with them, he believed he had stamped out the threat to his throne, 1 Samuel 22 verse 18. With shock rippling through David's men, a deep sorrow weighed upon David, whose heart ached for their lives lost. Lord, I am responsible. David cried out in anguish, for he knew that it was his flight that led to their unjust deaths. Yet even in despair, a glimmer of resolution burned within him. I will not let their sacrifice be in vain." He turned to Abiathar, now fleeing for his life. "Stay with me, for you shall be safe here. Together we will seek the counsel of the Lord. Together, we will not let fear dissolve our faith," he declared, embracing the priest who had lost his family to a vendetta fueled by jealousy. In that very moment, as the flickering flames from their fire danced against the cave walls, the Spirit of God moved afresh upon David. He felt the weight of the Lord's presence, affirming him in his leadership and igniting within him a surge of determination. "Let us inquire of God. Shall I pursue Saul?" he asked, kneeling in reverence, seeking divine direction. From deep within, David's heart resounded with earnest prayer, and the answer came, a whisper of assurance, "Pursue him, for you shall recover all." With renewed strength, David recounted the vow he made to his followers: he would lead them into battle not for vengeance but for justice. Thus, with Abiathar by his side, David rallied his band of men. He instilled courage within their hearts, weaving a vision of hope. They would reclaim their honor, contend against the forces of darkness, and stand as the very people God had chosen. United in resolve, they prepared for the journey ahead, marking the beginning of a fierce pursuit infused with divine purpose. Little did David know that the same God who guided him through the shadows was orchestrating alliances beyond what he could comprehend. For while he set forth on this path, in the hidden corners of Israel's land, destiny awaited a revealing of God's greater plan that would echo through eternity. Would David's pursuit lead him closer to his destiny, or would it unravel a deeper mystery of God's sovereign will? As the dawn crested over the horizon, casting light upon the rugged terrain, David and his men emerged from their dark refuge, the cave of Adullam. Heartbeats echoed a rhythm of anticipation, for the divine counsel they had sought urged them forward. Each step was a declaration of faith, their spirits lifted by the promise that they would recover all. "Gather your weapons," David instructed, his voice resolute like the sound of a trumpet. "We march with the Lord as our banner. No foe shall stand against us, for he is our fortress." The men, emboldened, strapped on their swords and tightened their belts. With Abiathar at his side, David felt the weight of prophecy and providence entwined with every decision. Their pursuit led them to the wilderness of Ziph, a landscape laden with hills and valleys. The men, weary from their flight, yet fueled by divine fervor, searched the terrain with discerning eyes. Amidst their search, news came to David of Saul's movements, relentless as ever, meticulously seeking his life. It was reported that Saul had camped in a stronghold, confiding in all his might. Nevertheless, David, sensing the ordained moment, stirred amidst his men. "Let us divide our forces. I shall go forth and spy out Saul's camp. If the Lord has brought us here, we shall witness his hand moving upon our behalf." And so 200 men remained behind, while David and Abiathar took with them another 200, clad in the shadows of their surroundings, as they crept closer to the heart of their adversary. With bated breath, they approached the enemy's camp, and there in the quiet of the night, David overheard a conversation that turned his heart afresh. One of Saul's soldiers spoke of the wonders of David, describing how he had slain the giant Goliath with mere stones and a sling. "Behold the one whom God had favored, has he not become a hero in the sight of the people?" The soldier recounted tales of past victories, a living testament to God's hand upon David. As David listened, a spirit of admiration surged forth. Yet his heart was still heavy. He remained aware of the deep-seated envy that had driven King Saul to madness. It was then that the Lord's voice beckoned his spirit with a clarity that pierced through the tension of the night. "For this purpose have I raised you up, a shepherd will become a king," it whispered, a vibrant reminder of the anointing that had once flowed at the hands of Samuel. David approached Abiathar, igniting hope in his eyes. "What do you see, priest? We are but a handful against this army, yet the Lord has given us signs. Shall we lay bare our path to justice, even in the face of such danger?" Abiathar, filled with the Spirit, nodded solemnly. "Yes, my king. Let us not falter, for the Lord goes before us. His promise shall be fulfilled." And as they returned to their men, the darkness began to lift. In unity, they proclaimed, "The Lord is our light and salvation, whom shall we fear?" Their voices rang throughout the wilderness like a chorus of warriors born anew, igniting the echoes of heaven itself. Yet, in that very moment, unbeknownst to them, a twist of fate loomed on the horizon. For it was Saul's own heart that began to resonate with doubt and fear, leading him to seek counsel from a familiar though forbidden source. As the murmur of divination filled the air, a ripple of trepidation washed over the land. David and his men pressed on, unknowingly entangled in a web of unfolding destiny. God's sovereign hand was shaping a course for them that had not yet revealed itself. Would they recover all, or would a choice made in desperation unveil a greater plan steeped in divine mystery? The path ahead beckoned, laden with the fruits of faith and the trials of their resolve. As the night deepened, David and his men remained hidden in the shadows, the flickering flames from Saul's camp casting ominous shadows upon their anxious faces. David, sensing the weight of the moment, turned to Abiathar, heart pressed by the perilous task before them. "Pray earnestly, Abiathar, that the Lord may reveal his will. We walk upon the precipice of destiny." Abiathar knelt, raising his hands to heaven, and calling out to the God who had delivered Israel from their enemies. His voice trembled with reverence. "O Lord of hosts, who knows the heart of man, grant us insight and strength this night. Show us the path that leads to victory." As dawn approached, a heavy silence enveloped the valley. The men tightened their grips on their weapons, anticipation gripping their hearts. David stepped silently toward the edge of the camp, his soul steeled by divine promise. There, under the cloak of morning mist, he spied Saul, surrounded by his commanders, speaking in low tones. "Men of valor," Saul proclaimed, his voice echoing with fear and frustration, "my heart quakes at the news of David's victories. For the Lord has departed from me, and I am left to fight my own battles." With each word, his torment grew, unsettling the men around him. As they shifted uneasily, Saul's eyes glimmered with desperation. "Seek out a medium, that I may inquire of the Lord through her. Perhaps she might tell me how to defeat this foe." With that, he commanded enforcers to scour the land for one who dwelled in darkness. Driven by the weighty revelation, David's heart stirred to the plight of Saul. "When darkness clouds one's heart," he whispered, "fear begets folly." He turned to Abiathar, who clasped the ephod fervently, the sacred garment representing divine communication. "Let us consult the Lord ourselves, for he remains our only refuge." Gathering the men, David called for silence, his voice laden with authority. "Brothers, the king of Israel falters in his fear. We must approach our God boldly, for he is faithful." They formed a circle, their hands intertwined, gazing skyward, seeking the Lord's guidance. "By your grace, O Lord, we beseech you," David spoke, "is this the time for confrontation? Shall we rise up against Saul?" Beneath the weight of their supplication, the atmosphere shifted, a sudden calmness nestled within their souls, as if heaven itself leaned in to listen. The winds shifted, and Abiathar sensed the direction of divine intent. "The Lord has declared," he spoke, voice trembling, "it is time to confront the king, but bear in mind, mercy is required. Offering him peace will bring glory to God's name." Courage ignited in David's heart, illuminating his path. "Then let us not delay. We will go forth and proclaim peace, that the Lord may restore what has been taken." With resolute determination, they steeled their resolve, prepared to obey the call despite the uncertainty ahead. As they approached the stronghold, they could see Saul's camp full of unrest. The echoes of anguish and trepidation enveloped the area as tactics of war clashed against the trembling hearts of men. David and his companions marched onward, their very presence challenging the thrumming chaos that encircled Saul. Little did David know, however, that even as he pursued restoration, a secret lay hidden within Saul's heart, one that would cause the fate of both men to intertwine in ways neither could foresee. The Lord's hand, veiled in mystery, was at work, unraveling a plan greater than the ambitions of kings, a plan wrought with unexpected reconciliations and divine justice. The moment of truth loomed, preparing to break forth, and amidst the gathering storm, the cries of the heart echoed far beyond the battlefield. Where grief and grace would collide, the lasting legacy of God's purpose would soon be revealed. What awaited them on this journey would alter the course of history, poised to ignite the flames of faith, redemption, and the promise of restoration in ways that neither David nor Saul could imagine. As the sun's first rays pierced the veil of night, David and his men advanced, their resolve as solid as the stones of the valley beneath their feet. The air was thick with expectancy and the weight of divine orchestration loomed over them. Approaching Saul's camp, a hush fell as they stepped into the shadows cast by the rising sun. Not far from Saul's pavilion, David signaled for his men to hold their ground. Fear and uncertainty danced in the eyes of the warriors around him, tempered only by the heart of their leader, which beat steadfastly in tune with God's purpose. David stepped forward, his heart heavy yet emboldened by the Lord's promise. "We must seek him out, he is still the king," he declared, trusting in the Lord's assurance that mercy would pave the way for healing. Suddenly, a voice pierced the silence. "Who goes there?" It was Abner, Saul's cousin, standing sentinel at the entrance. David's heart raced, truth mingling with urgency. "It is I, David, your servant," he called out, knowing that within this encounter lay the essence of God's plan. Abner, taken aback, hesitated before moving to alert Saul. "Tell him I come in peace," David implored. "For the Lord is at work between us, and I wish to speak without ill will." As Saul emerged, his features heavy with furrowed lines of guilt and fear, the two men met at a threshold of fate. "Is that your voice, David?" Saul asked, a tremor betraying his facade of authority. "You have come to mock my downfall." "No, my lord," David replied, his voice steady yet warm, like a balm upon a wound. "I seek to bring peace between us, for I am not your enemy, but a servant of the Most High." He gestured toward the sky, where the sun rose in undeniable glory. "The Lord chose you, and though you have strayed, he desires your heart." Saul's countenance shifted, revealing a crack in the armor he wore. "Alas, David, I have pursued you with unwarranted wrath. I have turned from the ways of the Lord." "And yet," David interjected, "God's mercy is rich and available even now. Let us not dwell on past grievances, but embrace the future he still has for us." Saul's brow furrowed as he searched David's face, wrestling with the remnants of pride and lingering shame. "You show me kindness when I have sought your destruction. How can this be? The Lord has chosen you, and I do not wish to take your place but to serve alongside you, as a brother might. Let us return together, and seek his favor anew. For the Lord still has plans for Israel." The atmosphere tensed around them, as if heaven itself held its breath. David's plea pierced Saul's heart with the promise of redemption, a whisper of hope amid despair. "A brother, you say?" Saul's voice began to soften, yet in the depths of his soul, a storm brewed, pride and fear clashed against grief and longing. "If this is true, would you truly stand with me again?" "By God's grace, I shall," David affirmed, his eyes alight with conviction. "For it is not I who would take the throne, but the Lord who restores, even from ashes." Saul, unable to bear the weight of his own heart any longer, broke. "I have sinned, David. I see it clearly now." Tears brimmed in his eyes, a king undone by the kindness of a rival, yet forged anew in the crucible of regret and grace. In that defining moment, the hands of time spun in divine elegance, weaving a tapestry unseen. The spirits of both men, marked by the sovereign stroke of God's hand, intertwined in a new chapter, one of unanticipated reconciliation promising to alter their destinies and that of a nation. But as their hearts began to mend, shadows loomed from the corners of the battlefield. The enemy still plotted against them both. Would the restored relationship withstand the trials to come? In the hidden folds of God's infinite wisdom, a greater plan was unfurling, one that held the whisper of victory, but also the portent of sacrifice. For even amid restored hope, the presage of greater tribulation awaited, shadowing the dawn of what God's sovereign purpose would ultimately require. What would happen next would determine not only their fates, but The future of all Israel, a divine suspense left hanging in the silence of the morning. As the sun ascended higher, bathing the land in golden light, Saul stood before David, his heart opening to the gentle touch of remorse. "I have wronged you, David, and in my fear I have turned against the Lord's anointed," he murmured, his voice shaking with the burden of a king seeking redemption. David, seeing the earnestness in Saul's expression, reached forth his hand, offering a gesture of reconciliation. "Let us walk together, my lord," he encouraged, "for together we may yet find the favor of the Almighty." Saul took a deep breath, drawing in the air of possibility, yet shadows mustered as whispers in the distance foretold of the Philistine marauders gathering in secret, preparing to unleash havoc upon Israel. Abner, witnessing the unexpected handling of peace between these two, remained vigilant. "My lord," he cautioned, "the day is not yet clear. The adversary nigh comes. We must prepare." David sensed the urgency in Abner's words. "Let us not allow fear to overshadow the promise of the Lord. For if God is for us, who can stand against us?" His voice rang with unshakable faith, echoing the truth of what had once been spoken through the prophets. Saul, wrestling with his past failures, nodded slowly. "You speak as one who has greatly trusted in the Lord, even when the skies darkened. I desire the same, David. Help me see the light amidst this dark revival." At that moment, a messenger arrived, hurriedly scattering dust with his swift feet. "My lords!" he gasped, his body trembling. "The Philistines prepare to attack. They gather in numbers near the valley of Elah." Saul's heart sank as the weight of kingship festered within him, igniting memories of previous battles fought, many marked by bloodshed and loss. David, discerning the turmoil in Saul's eyes, laid a steady hand upon the king's shoulder. "Fear not the multitude, for we have the might of the Lord. Speak, and I will follow. Together we stand as you once commanded, a united front." Saul, startled by David's steadfastness, looked into the depths of courage found in his rival. "Will you fight beside me, David? Will you trust with me that we may yet face the foe this day?" "I will stand with you," David affirmed, his voice like a trumpet of hope. "For the same God who delivered me from the bear and the lion will deliver us again. Let us gather the men and prepare for battle." The camp stirred to life as the warriors strapped on their swords and drew their shields, emboldened by the prospect of mutual support and courage rooted in divine faith. As they assembled, David called upon the Captain of Heaven, lifting his eyes to the heavens. "O Lord, mighty in battle, grant us victory. May your will be our sword and shield." The men, stirred by David's fervent prayer, rallied around him, igniting a fire of unity and faith. The sun's rays glinted off the armor of those prepared to march into the valley, reflecting the glories yet to be revealed. Yet within the hidden corridors of Saul's heart, a whisper of doubt lingered, sowing seeds of unrest. What if the peace he craved was but an illusion? What if, in seeking to restore this bond, he only invited greater catastrophe? As they marched toward the impending clash, a tension coiled in the air, a sharp reminder that reconciliation was but the beginning of a greater trial. Unknown to them, forces unseen prepared to stretch the limits of their newfound faith. Would the tides of war reveal the heart of a king truly original, or would they expose the flaws of desperation and fear? As the ground shook beneath their feet, a greater spiritual drama unfolded, the climax yet unimagined, the outcome hanging in balance. In the heavens, unseen forces shifted, orchestrating a destiny that would entwine both enemies and allies. What path would the Lord reveal amid this looming contrast, and how would his sovereign will be fulfilled? For the battle for both land and spirit had only just begun, and the fates of not merely David and Saul, but all of Israel, lay suspended in the embrace of the Almighty's unwavering hand. And it came to pass that as the armies of Israel assembled in the valley, the sound of clashing metal and cries of warriors echoed within the dimples of the land. The Philistines, fierce and arrayed in defiance, stretched forth their ranks, like the rising tide upon the shore, threatening to engulf the faithful children of God. Saul stood firm at the helm, his heart pounding against the weight of kingship, while David's presence ignited within him a flicker of resolution. The voices of warriors around them were scarcely quieted, yet a deeper silence enveloped Saul's thoughts. "O God of Israel," he uttered as the solemnity of the moment drew him nearer to the very edge of despair. "How shall we conquer without your might?" David, ever watchful and attuned to the Spirit, stepped close to the king, crisp with conviction. "Remember the words of the Lord, do not fear, for I am with you, be not dismayed, for I am your God. Upon this foundation my trust rests." He spoke with the fervor of one who had continuously walked in the shadow of divine protection. The tension among the troops grew palpable, and the Philistine champion appeared upon the battlefield, a towering figure named Goliath. His voice thundered over the valley, shaking the hearts of men. "Choose a man for yourself, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants, but if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." A collective shudder passed through the hearts of Saul and his men as they beheld Goliath's arrogance. Fear gripped the hearts of seasoned warriors, and whispers of defeat spread like wildfire. Yet David, who had been placed by God in this time, inquired further, curious at the tremors echoing through the ranks. "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach of Israel?" His voice was steady, the fire of righteous indignation lighting his eyes. Eliab, his eldest brother, rebuked him sharply, "Why have you come down? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? You are but a boy, and know not the ways of war." Yet David unperturbed, responded, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" Resolute, David was led before Saul, who examined this youth adorned not with armor, but with unwavering faith. "You cannot go against this Philistine to fight with him, you are but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth." David, his spirit unbroken, recounted the deliverances of the Lord. "Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it. And I struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God." The atmosphere thickened as Saul beheld the conviction in David's heart. "Go," said Saul, "and the Lord be with you." As David prepared to face the giant, he collected 5 smooth stones from the brook, a humble instrument in the hands of the Almighty. His heart was attuned to the promise of what was to come, and the whispers of doubt that once haunted Saul began to fade beneath the confidence curling around the faithful youth. With each step towards Goliath, the ground seemed to tremble, not in fear, but in anticipation of a mighty act soon to unfold. What would be birthed from this encounter? What transformation awaited both the king and the kingdom as God revealed his sovereign plan through the courage of a shepherd boy? The battle beckoned, and heaven watched with bated breath, for the stage was set for a revelation that would shake the foundations of Israel. Would the glory of God break forth through the hand of the unlikeliest of warriors, and how would this act lead to the fulfillment of his promise to his people? The answer lay tantalizingly close, just beyond the veil of impending conflict. And as David drew near to Goliath, the mighty champion of the Philistines cast a disdainful glance upon him. He laughed, a sound laced with contempt that echoed across the valley. "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" He bellowed, cursing David by his gods. "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." Yet David replied, his voice resounding with faith unshaken by the giant's threats. "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and take your head from you. And this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." The hearts of the Israelite soldiers, once trembling with fear, began to stir with the rising hope emanating from David's bold declaration. As Goliath moved to approach him, David rushed forward, unafraid, from the ranks of Israel's army. The sound of his feet upon the earth was like the beating of drums, heralding what was about to unfold. David reached into his pouch, his fingers drawing forth one of the smooth stones, his faith now fortified like a stalwart shield. He loaded it into his sling with expert swiftness and spun it round, the world around him fading as he focused on the towering silhouette of Goliath. The air crackled with tension, and time seemed to stand still as the young shepherd released the stone with fierce determination. As the stone flew through the air, it struck Goliath squarely on the forehead, the force echoing like thunder through the valley. The giant staggered, confusion crossed his features, and in an instant, he fell face down upon the ground, silencing the taunts that had once echoed so boldly. The army of Israel erupted into a mighty roar, a sound of triumph bursting forth from throats once choked by fear. David rushed to the fallen giant, standing over him like an emissary of God's justice. Drawing Goliath's sword from its sheath, he beheaded the Philistine and held the severed head aloft, a symbol of divine victory. The Philistines turned in terror, their invincible facade crumbling into fear as they fled the battlefield. The children of Israel rallied, their hearts ignited, and they pursued their enemies, reclaiming the honor and dignity that had been placed in jeopardy. As David returned to Saul, with the head of Goliath in his hand, glory filled the air, and the warriors of Israel sang praises. Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. Echoed the melodies of joy, and the spirit of celebration rang through the land. Yet unbeknownst to them, this victory was but the beginning. In the shadows, a whisper rose from the depths of heaven, and the Lord spoke to Samuel, "For I have rejected Saul as king, and I am raising a new ruler over my people, a man after my own heart." Thus began the unfolding of a divine plan, orchestrated by the hand of the Almighty, wherein shepherds would rise to kingship, and the world would witness how God uses the weak to confound the mighty. How would this newfound victory lead to the establishment of a throne that would endure forever? The answer remained veiled in the tapestry of divine purpose, as the next chapter of God's sovereign narrative prepared to unfurl. And so it came to pass, in the days following the great victory over Goliath, that the tapestry of God's plan continued its intricate weave. The hearts of the people stirred with awe, witnessing not just the triumph of David, but the undeniable movement of the Lord among them. In the songs sung and the praises lifted, God's faithful purpose shimmered like a radiant star in the night sky. David, now hailed as a champion, returned to King Saul, the echoes of the victory resounding in every corner of Israel. But within the heart of Saul, tumult brewed. The envy that had once clouded his judgment intensified, fueled by the songs of the people. "Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s, they sang. These melodies, joyful yet piercing, felt like daggers to a king who once reigned with honor but now tasted the bitterness of his own spiraling fate. Despite the fractures of jealousy, David remained steadfast in heart. He sought to reassure Saul, recognizing the weight of kingship upon him. "My lord," he spoke gently, "I am but your servant, a shepherd at your side. Let us unite our hearts and strength for the good of Israel." Yet the shadows cast by Saul's insecurities distorted their relationship further, leaving David navigating the delicate lines of loyalty and danger. As the days turned into weeks, the strife between the two men swelled, the rift of unspoken fears contributing to a storm that loomed ever closer. Even as David served Saul, undertaking missions that exemplified valor, the king's gaze grew heavy with suspicion. He cast his eyes towards David, and with each glance, the weight of treachery fell like a shroud over their camaraderie. The moment of reckoning arrived one fateful day as Saul, overwhelmed by the demon of paranoia, hurled a spear towards David in a frenzied attempt to silence the fear that consumed him. David, quick of foot and sharp of spirit, evaded the weapon that sought to extinguish his life. In that narrow escape, he realized the depth of Saul's desperation, a king now lost, blinded by pride, unable to let go of the throne that God had destined for another. 1 Samuel 18 verses 10-11. With the shadows growing darker, David fled to the wilderness, becoming a fugitive yet again, burdened by the heartache of betrayal. The man who had once sung sweet psalms in the fields now sought solace amid the harshness of caves and barren hills. And yet, even in his flight, God's covenant promise burned bright within him. He became a leader of men who, like him, had felt the sting of rejection, those in misery and despair. "Come to me," he would proclaim, "For the Lord is our refuge and strength." Psalm 46 verse 1. During those trials, the Lord remained ever present, anointing David with courage and wisdom, enhancing his leadership and fortifying the spirits of his followers. Together they faced adversity, the Spirit of the Lord renewing their hearts daily and guiding their steps, cementing David's status not merely as a leader, but as a beloved shepherd to his people. Yet God, in his magnificent sovereignty, was not finished with Saul. The king, confused and tormented by his own demons, visited the witch of Endor, seeking divine knowledge that was forbidden. In that darkness, he encountered a truth that rippled through eternity, but it left him in ruin as the final threads of his reign unraveled. In this abyss of desperation, God's hand silently turned, for out of the ashes of a flawed king, he prepared the ground for a man after his own heart, 1 Samuel 28 verses 7-17. As the hours stretched long and murmurs of conflict weaved through Israel's borders, the time arrived for divine resolution. The king, vulnerable in his pride, met the trajectory of the shepherd anointed by God, setting the stage for a confrontation far greater than any battlefield. With the tumultuous whispers of war on the horizon, the chosen David stood ready, not merely waiting to reclaim a throne, but longing to unite a nation under the everlasting covenant of God's faithfulness. The day of reckoning came as the forces of the Philistines gathered for their final assault. In that valley, echoes of fate hung heavy, wounded hearts converging into a moment wherein legacies would soar or fall. Saul, distraught and devoid of divine promise, encountered his fate, yet David, emboldened by the Spirit of the Lord, advanced not with revenge but with the vision of restoration. "Trust in the Lord and do good," he rallied, "dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness," Psalm 37 verse 3. His very words breathed life into his men, transforming despair into determination, signaling the dawn of a new era, a moment steeped in redemption and fulfillment of God's long-foretold plans. And as the battle cry resounded across the landscape, it ushered in a new awakening for Israel. Would the covenant remain? Could God's purpose shine even through the darkest of hours? The answer lingered just beyond the horizon, set against the backdrop of a sovereign plan unfolding, revealing that his love, though tested, was unbreakable. This was the moment, dear friends, for all of us to embrace the revelation of God's transformational promises. As David's journey intertwined with God's will, so too must we invite that divine narrative into our lives. Are you hearing his calling upon your heart? I urge you now subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that echo God's incredible faithfulness. Leave a like now to help spread his word through the algorithm. Every click can touch a soul in need of hope. Comment below with your reflections. What truth from David's journey resonates with your own walk of faith? And don't wait even one more second to share this transformative testimony with at least 5 friends who must hear God's truth. Together, let us illuminate the path of faith for others, holding on to the promise that He is with us always.